It looks like America put up $50 million to capture Maduro. But now they went ahead and did it themselves, so they don't have to pay anybody off. But the idea is crazy. How can the military go into another country and just, I guess, kidnap the president? Well, technically, the guy wasn't the president. He was illegitimate, won the election, is what they say. But I think it's amazing how America is able to just go to any country and take down their leader. Even if it was a fake leader, they were able to do it. So shout out to America. It's crazy. All right, today I'm going to put on Maria Bartiromo, Sunday Futures, but audio only. So I'll just play the audio and interrupt every now and then. Let's take a look. Happy Sunday. My name is Noel here at Verbal on Life. Trying to talk about it because it's crazy.
Colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did.
The president approving the large strike on Venezuela and the capture of Maduro and his wife. Right now, Maduro sits in a New York federal prison. The Justice Department says Maduro partnered with narco-terrorist groups like FARC, ELN, the Sinaloa cartel, the Zetas, and Tren de Aragua. President Trump
I'll say this much. It's crazy that Trump gave him so many chances and just told him to leave. You can go anywhere you want around the world. And the guy actually refused and waited to get in prison. It's crazy.
Making a bold move that he says puts America first.
Oh, real quick before moving on, let me just give a quick shout out to Carol Hammond. How you doing? Giving me a shout out. Thank you. And also, been waiting. So yeah, the show was going to put it on today, but it's audio only. So we can only listen to what they're talking about. But thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And anybody else watching, remember to give the video a thumbs up. Let's keep it moving.
We want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it.
The United Nations Security Council is meeting tomorrow on Venezuela. We'll talk with the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz. We'll also talk with President Trump's former national security advisor, Robert O'Brien. Plus, how will lawmakers respond when Congress is back in session this week? We'll talk with Senator Katie Britt. Plus, one of the members of the Gang of Eight, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford. We'll also speak with House Majority Whip Tom Emmer and Anna Paulina Luna, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. It's all right here, right now, on Sunday Morning Futures.
This weekend is crazy. A lot of things happening. I cannot believe we actually captured somebody from another country. The way they did it was amazing. They sent in the helicopters. They went in there, turned off the lights, bombed, and just took the man down. Whew, nobody got killed, and they didn't lose any of the weapons. So, total success.
We begin with a historic day in the Caribbean. Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane says U.S. forces had practiced maneuvers for months and got the go-ahead from President Trump late Friday night to strike Venezuela and capture Nicolas Maduro. Trump says Maduro was being highly guarded in a presidential palace, but wasn't able to close the door to a safe room. As the United Nations Security Council is set to meet tomorrow on Venezuela, Here's what Ambassador Mike Waltz said to Venezuela's ambassador and the Security Council less than 2 weeks ago.
The United States does not recognize Nicolas Maduro or his cronies as the legitimate government of Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro is a fugitive from American justice. In fact, Maduro and his regime stole the election, and the international community has the receipts. President Trump has been very clear that he is going to use the full power of the United States of America, the full might of the United States, to take on and eradicate these drug cartels, which have operated with impunity in our hemisphere for far too long, and everyone knows it.
Joining us now for a Sunday Morning Futures exclusive, the United States Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. I think the message you delivered was clear. President Trump has been very clear. I think the people with ties to Venezuela, people who believe in law and order, are cheering in the streets. But you're about to walk into a situation tomorrow at the United Nations where a lot of people don't like a strong President Trump, but they don't like a strong United States of America. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
Well, first, Jason, I want to salute President Trump as commander-in-chief and our amazing military, special operations operatives, and law enforcement for the bold, decisive, and successful action that they've taken. In terms of the United Nations and the Security Council, Jason, you're going to hear a lot of hand-wringing on Article 2 of the UN Charter, which deals with sovereignty. And I will remind everyone of Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, which is, as we have in the past, which is a nation's inherent right to self-defense. So in this case, you have a drug kingpin, an illegitimate leader, indicted in the United States, coordinating with the likes of China, Russia, Iran, terrorist groups like Hezbollah, pumping drugs, thugs, and weapons into the United States of America, threatening to invade its neighbors, its neighbor Guyana, with one of the largest oil discoveries in the world, is under threat from the Maduro regime. One of the largest refugee crises in the world, larger than even Syria.
One would think that a drug overlord will have a whole bunch of money and will know how to use that money to self-defend themselves, to defend themselves, basically. And all that money for nothing. Like, it was so easy for America to go in there, maybe in a couple of hours, take them down. Why have all that money if not going to make use of it? Really, money doesn't mean anything if you don't use it to save yourself.
Jason, and at the end of the day, was the United States, was President Trump just going to let that status quo continue? Absolutely not. He gave diplomacy a chance. He gave Maduro a chance, but he took decisive action in the interest of the United States. And Maduro will now be prosecuted in federal court.
It is amazing to me the number of people who don't understand that when Donald Trump actually says something, he means it and he foreshadows it, and it means peace through strength. But I also, Ambassador, thought it was interesting that earlier in the day before Maduro was captured and taken, they were actually meeting with the Chinese. What are the Chinese interests there in Venezuela? Why was Venezuela so important to the Chinese?
Well, a number of reasons. One, the Chinese are moving incredibly aggressively into the Western Hemisphere, into South America. President Trump and Secretary Rubio are pushing back on that hard. But what you've seen is China getting cheap oil, moving in and taking key geography, taking things like ports and rail, and food supplies, right?
Sorry. A lot of professionals were talking about that. If we make a move against Venezuela, China or Russia, we're going to make a move against America. Like, they try to use that as fear. Like, America better not do anything. But it's just that fear. Nobody can really touch America. if you think about it. So this is a good test to see what is China going to do about this. What is Russia going to do about this? Seriously, all that fear the professionals try to put into the government, not working.
In our Western Hemisphere, right in Central South America. And this is why, amongst many reasons, this is such a critical national security issue. And to your point, senior Chinese delegation was meeting with Maduro just hours before. And we haven't even started talking about the likes of Hezbollah, Iran, Russia, and others. And here's a bigger picture, Jason, of what President Trump is doing with his foreign policy and the strategic approach here. You now have Argentina moving our way, or is a key ally, Chile moving our way, Paraguay, Honduras. We're taking UN action against the gangs in Haiti with burden sharing there. President Trump knows from the Arctic to our border to Central and South America, our supply chains matter. Our homeland security matters, and we have the food supply, the critical minerals, the energy, you name it, for our national security right here in our Western Hemisphere, but it's been ignored by administration after administration, no longer under President Trump.
Yeah, I do like the idea of the Don Rowe doctrine. It rings bells to me. Explain to us how bad. I like the way you framed it. Drugs and thugs. That's what Venezuela was bringing into the United States. How bad was that situation? We saw things playing out in Colorado and Tren de Aragua, and crisscrossing this country. But these characters were coming out of Venezuela and doing so on purpose. I mean, that's what the indictment's all about.
Yeah, and that's the strategic shift. President Trump, Stephen Miller, DHS Secretary Noam, and others have made. These groups, Tren de Aragua, Cartel de los Soles, these aren't like our grandfather's mafia. These are more like ISIS and Al Qaeda with state backing. Maduro was a state backer of narco-terrorism. These operatives are some of the most vicious in the world. They're right here in the United States killing Americans, but they have the backing of Venezuela's military and intelligence service, partnered with the Iranians, the Chinese and Russians, and also the Cubans. So enough was enough. Enough with our homeland security being threatened, and the president took that decisive action. And you're hearing, Jason, a lot of analogies to Iraq and those mistakes of the past. This is much more like Noriega, a convicted narco-terrorist who is now being brought to justice. Panama, which, by the way, is sitting on the UN Security Council right now as a rotating member, is far better for it. Our region, our safety and security for every American will be far better after this action.
Well, the United Nations meeting tomorrow, and you're going to be there, and we'll be watching. Ambassador Mike Waltz, truly appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us.
With one of the largest, our region, our safety and security for every American.
It's in office because it's not going to turn out well.
I'll say this much, man. So many people try to put fear in America and telling us that we better not do anything. It's nice to have a president that doesn't have really that much fear and moves ahead with the Monroe Doctrine, which is now called the Don Rock Doctrine.
Opportunities to find his way somewhere else.
A rotating member is far better for it. Our region, our safety and security for every American will be far better.
Sorry about that.
Well, the United Nations meeting tomorrow, and you're going to be there, and we'll be watching. Ambassador Mike Waltz, truly appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us.
All right, here we go.
Says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States, and the president addressed it. This is a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy, but instead he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And, but I think the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office because it's not going to turn out well.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he hopes the world learns that President Trump isn't all talk when he warns he'll take action against any threat to the United States of America.
Yeah.
Let's bring in Alabama Senator Katie Britt, a member of the Judiciary Committee. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. Give us your top line, what you saw, what you believe, and also your understanding of what this indictment really does and the justification for the United States taking the action that it did.
Absolutely. Well, I think Secretary Rubio said it best. Look, when this president talks, when he tells people what he's going to do, he means it. And unlike President Biden, he's going to follow through. Look, there is no doubt that Venezuelans have a greater opportunity for prosperity because of President Trump's actions. There is no doubt that Americans are safer and more secure because of President Trump's actions. I am so grateful that we finally have a commander in chief that is willing to put the safety and security of this country first, put it front and center. And Jason, when you're thinking about the contrast from the previous administration, it couldn't be greater. Here you have President Biden, who was all talk and yet no action. If you remember less than a year ago, on January 10th, when you had Senate Democrats coming out and saying that this was a sham inauguration of Maduro, and you had them asking the Trump administration when they came into office to hold Maduro's feet to the fire, you also had President Biden raising the bounty to $25 million on Maduro's head. So it is really rich that you hear Democrats now saying, well, what's next? You actually wanted this to happen back when you were in charge, but you didn't have the moxie to get it done. And at the end of the day, President Trump means that he will tell you what he's going to do, and then he's actually going to deliver on it. Look, I could not be more grateful for our men and women in uniform, our courageous military, and our law enforcement officers who perfectly executed the mission. This is yet again, we've seen a flawless execution of the most difficult mission, just like we saw in Operation Midnight Hammer under President Trump's leadership. So I am grateful that we are now learning what American strength is. We are seeing it in action, and gone are the days of talk. And now we're putting American safety and security first and foremost. And as for him having his day in court, he's going to have it, Jason, and justice will be served. I believe in that. And when you look at what happened to Jocelyn Nungary, when you look at what happened to Laken Riley, look, I can guarantee you that their parents wish that President Biden had the backbone that President Trump did, because their children may still be here today. So whether it is that,
You know what I think? That Trump is only going to be in office, or the president, for 3 more years. So whenever a Democrat comes on board, they could always pardon the president of Venezuela. So that's still on the table. He may not have to do his entire life in jail.
or the actual narco-terrorism that has ravished this country. I've sat in front of too many parents who lost their children either to a fentanyl poisoning or a drug overdose. And President Trump said, I'm not only going to talk about ending that, I'm going to do what it takes to make it happen.
Your point about the victims and all this, it gets way overlooked. It's not as if these things hadn't taken place over quite a few decades. And you're right about President Biden, because at one point, the bounty, if you will, or the reward for helping to identify and bring Maduro to justice was $15 million. But it was under Biden that they upped it to $25 million. I didn't hear any Democrat get mad at that. And when President Obama had his so-called kill list and he was taking people out by drone attack, I didn't hear the Democrats saying boo about, oh my gosh, where's the justice in all that? Donald Trump goes in and does it right with precision. No Americans harmed, no Americans killed, minimal damage. He's now brought in, he's in a court, he's in a holding facility, federal facility here in New York City. And suddenly the Democrats are going to fundraise off of that and they're going to call it illegitimate and illegal. What's the legal case for that?
Look, you just nailed it. On the same day that President Biden upped the bounty on Maduro's head to $25 million. He also gave blanket protections, extended them for Venezuelans that were here because he said he knew that that country was unstable. So when you see Kamala Harris come out today and say that we have now destabilized a region, she is actually talking out of both sides of her mouth, but nothing is new with that because she and her administration, the Biden-Harris administration, when she was the border czar, made sure that Venezuelans had blanket parole into this nation and actually created a program centered on them, expanded it, as you know, to Cuba and Honduras and Nicaragua, as well as Venezuela, waving them into our nation. So look, the proof is there. They talked, but yet they didn't have what it took to actually keep Americans safe and to actually follow through. And now the rest of the world, whether it is Hezbollah, Hamas, or anyone around the globe, knows that when President Trump says something, he means it. And I hope that everyone pays attention because this is a new day in our country, and both Americans and Venezuelans are better as a result of it.
Yeah, the world is a safer place than it was just 48 hours ago.
Absolutely.
Senator Katie Britt, truly appreciate you joining us. Thank you. All right, coming up, Congress is back in session starting tomorrow with the Venezuela attack looming over a busy week. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer from Minnesota, he joins us next.
Let's see what he talk about.
Congress back in session this week. House Speaker Mike Johnson says members will get briefings from the Trump administration on the strikes in Venezuela. So let's bring in House Majority Whip Tom Emmer from Minnesota. We were just talking about this on air with Senator Britt. I think the precision of the execution of this operation was just second to none. And a lot of people in Minnesota and states all across this country, we'll never know the names of the people who did the executed this, but they did so and they made America proud. How do you think this is going to play, though? Democrats are going to fight hard.
You know what they should do? They should make a movie out of it. Just like they made a movie out of the bin Laden killing, they got to make a movie out of the kidnapping or imprisonment of the Venezuelan president. That would be like a top-notch movie. The only reason they may not do it is because of TDS, because Trump derangement syndrome. But it will be an amazing movie if they make it.
And trying to say it was illegitimate, it was illegal, it was unconstitutional. What say you?
Well, first off, you're right. Those special forces people, it's called quiet professionalism, Jason. They just do their job. You don't know who they are, but God bless them. And God bless this president of peace, Donald J. Trump, for being willing to make the call. First off, let's be very clear. This was more of an extradition. This was a law enforcement proceeding to capture someone who has been indicted on some very serious charges of killing Americans, of having intent to commit crimes that most Americans may not be aware of, but they're going to now. And it was the capture of someone who was an illegitimate ruler. He stole an election, so he wasn't even supposed to be there. Much different than a military move against a military adversary. This, again, was an
Imagine they would have done the same thing to Biden for stealing the 2020 election. Although there is no other country that could have done it, but that's funny.
Tradition. This was a law enforcement action entirely appropriate by the Trump administration. And you asked me about our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. You know, I understand they do not like our president. I understand that many of them have this thing called Trump derangement syndrome, that, you know, they're going to hate everything that Donald Trump does. But they've got to figure out, are they on the side of the American people? Do they care about the victims of the crimes that Maduro and his thugs have committed in this country? Or are they interested in safety and security and peace, not only in this country for the people that elected them to represent them, but in our Western Hemisphere, Jason, and obviously all around the globe, because we know that this thug, Maduro, this criminal, was literally working directly with our adversaries in China, in Iran, in Russia. This is a really important move by the Trump administration, and our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, for once, they should stand with the American people instead of just spewing their hatred for our president.
The number of people living in fear of Tren de Aragua, the Sinaloa cartel, the FARC, there's so many of them. And now they can rest a little bit easier. This is still an ongoing battle, but the contrast with Joe Biden, President Biden, Kamala Harris importing these people, as opposed to Donald Trump's action, it could not be more stark. Look, Congressman, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about what's going to happen on Wednesday of this week, when the first hearing is going to happen regarding Minnesota, your home state. You've been very vocal on this issue, but the waste, the fraud, the outright abuse of the taxpayer dollars, the billions of dollars that has evidently been wasted and fraudulently out the door. My understanding here is the Minnesota Department of Children, Youth, and Families has 55 open investigations. And so we're going to hear on Wednesday this, from some of the state lawmakers that have been trying to blow the whistle there in Minnesota. Give us the update on what's happening in Minnesota.
Look, you're a little low on the 55, Jason. My understanding.
They should all be deported. Everybody who committed fraud and broke the law in Minnesota, deport them.
Is there are 80 Somali daycares that have been under investigation for a while. And by the way, those daycares, and it's not that all Somalis are criminal. It just so happens to be that, for instance, the $250 million Feeding Our Future pandemic scandal, the largest in the country, 90% of the people indicted, and now I think 60 of them have been convicted, were from the Somali community. So when I say the Somali daycares, these were being investigated back in 2017 and 18. And it's not just child care services. As you know, Kelly Loeffler just identified almost 8,000 loans and $400 million in value related to the fraudsters. You've got housing fraud. It's amazing. So you're right. Our friend Jamie Comer, who actually replaced a former chair, ranking member named Jason Chaffetz, is calling in some of the top leaders in Minnesota who have been trying to sound the alarm on this fraud for a long, long time. And by the way, these are just a few of the people, because we've been doing the same thing. For the last 3 years, we were trying to get someone to report on this audacious fraud. And guess what? It took a president by the name of Donald J. Trump, who your previous guests have already indicated not only says what he's going to do, but then he does what he says. And he put out there that you've got this fraud that's running rampant. It is pretty much driven by people in the Somali community. And guess what? He's got 9 of his all-star cabinet members. I've just named a couple of them that are heavy into this. They're going to get to the bottom of it, and it starts on Wednesday. Keep in mind, he's also called in Governor Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison the week after that.
That'll be good. That'll be must-see TV. Congressman Tom Emmer from Minnesota, thank you so much for joining us. All right, up next, more on the secret mission to capture Maduro that took months of practice. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford joins us next.
Again, that was a Hollywood movie taking down the Venezuelan president. So I really wish they invest money and make that movie happen, just like the Bin Laden movie. So they could do it with this one. This was top-notch military action.
We called members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function.
So if I could add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked.
Secretary Marco Rubio and President Trump explaining why congressional leaders were not notified about the Venezuela operation before it began. Let's bring in one of the members of the Gang of Eight, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford. Chairman, you've heard from Marco Rubio, who also was the chairman. He was chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Do you feel like the notification was proper and timely?
Yeah, I do. And here's why. You just heard the president say you need to keep that universe of individuals who know what's going on to a bare minimum for operational security. And when you open the door to, congressional notification, you're basically opening the door to potential leaks. Now, I get that. Now, as a member of Gang of Eight, I got to be careful about, what I say and how I say it. But the reality is there was no congressional notification requirement here because this was a law enforcement action, first and foremost. Secondly, even if there was a congressional notification, there's not a pre-notification requirement, which plays into the idea of operational security. You have to maintain, if we're going to keep our operators safe, we have to maintain the highest degree of operational security to ensure mission success. That was what was taking place here. I got a call from not only Secretary Rubio, but Secretary Hegseth in the immediate aftermath of this action. And basically, what Secretary Rubio said was exactly what he just said in that press report, that it was a trigger-based operation that had to be made in real time with various considerations, both weather and intelligence and everything that was required to be able to execute this in a timely fashion and to optimize the idea that we're going to actually get the success here.
Not only did our special operators execute this flawlessly, but obviously there was incredible intelligence that we will never hear or see, sources and methods and people putting their lives on the line to make this possible. Maybe talk to that, but also I really want to understand what's happening in the region, because you can't have this discussion without talking about the implications to Cuba, which is it's always been teetering on being a failed state, but without the support financially, oil, etc., from Venezuela, what do you see happening in Cuba?
Well, Cuba has for a long time been essentially trafficking in healthcare. That is to say, they made folks in Venezuela and Nicaragua and other countries in the Western Hemisphere believe that they were the preeminent healthcare providers in the region. I've been there many, many times, and I can tell you that Cuba is not the preeminent healthcare provider in the Western Hemisphere. But what they've done is they have essentially bartered healthcare services where they're deploying doctors to countries like Venezuela in exchange for oil. Now, advance that even a little more.
Like in the news and at schools, they always talk about Cuba having the best medicine on earth. What a lie. And they could say that because we don't know what's going on in Cuba. We don't hear anything. We don't know the news. And man, finally for it to come out that they're really not the best in the world.
Also exchanging military services. That is to say, everybody around Maduro were Cubans. The colectivos that were exercising control in Venezuela, Cuban. That's what they do. That's their stock and trade. And that's the only thing that's kept them afloat. Now, with Venezuela out of the picture, potentially, what does that do to Cuba, which is teetering on, as you suggested, on the brink of failed state status? It puts them in a really tough place. Now, I've been to Cuba many times, and every time I've been there, it seems like there's always a brownout or a blackout, or some conditions are terrible. Cuba has great potential, but not under communist leadership. And I surely don't want to see New York City come to the same situation that exists, because communists typically tend to make bad decisions, and it's a failed model of governance. But we see this in Nicaragua, we see it in Venezuela, we see it in Cuba. That is the communist triad, if you will, that exists in the Western Hemisphere. And those three countries are inextricably linked. So by getting rid of Maduro, you're making it much more difficult for Cuba to operate and for Nicaragua to operate to forward the communist agenda in the Western Hemisphere.
Very quickly, we only have a short amount of time. Talk to us about the Venezuelans that were basically being imported into the United States.
And by the way, so people are saying that next Trump is going to take down Cuba or Colombia. So those two are up for grab. Hopefully you go for Cuba first. I think it's easier.
United States of America, because this was not, a grandma who's just trying to take care of business. There are a lot of thugs and drugs that were flowing from Venezuela.
No question about it. Tren de Aragua is one part of that. The Cartel de Soles is the other. And what Maduro did was create a safe operating space for cartels and everything that implies not only narcotics, but illicit trafficking of humans, and really availing themselves of those transit routes up through places like the Darien Gap in Panama, traversing north through Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and then Mexico ultimately presenting on the southern border of the United States. this was under the Biden administration, allowed basically to happen, even though the Biden administration acknowledged that Maduro was not a legitimate president, but no action was ever taken to stop that. And President Trump said, nope, not on my watch. We're going to stop it. Not only are we going to shut down our border, but we're also going to go to the root cause. You've heard that term before. The root cause of irregular migration is criminal activity that the cartels support, and people like Maduro were given safe passage.
Yeah. The Biden administration was all bark and no action, as you just articulated. Congressman Rick Crawford,
absolutely.
Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, coming up, the message the United States strike sends to our adversaries and unraveling Venezuela's relationship with its strongest allies like Russia and China. Former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien joins us next.
You've been fighting this for a long time.
I'll say this much. Trump is doing God's work. The man wants to see peace around the world.
Maria, you're coming to us this morning from an undisclosed location. Are you fearing for your life? What else needs to be done to stop Maduro?
Of course, I fear for my life. I've been accused of terrorism as thousands and thousands of Venezuelan people. There are almost 1,000 political prisoners that have been tortured. Many have been even killed in prison. And millions have been forced, a third of our population, to leave our country in order to survive. Just imagine what a free Venezuela will unleash. On first hand, security, stopping the suffering of our people and the crimes against humanity that have been committed. We will open opportunities.
Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado telling Maria in October why Maduro needed to be overthrown. Let's bring in Ambassador Robert O'Brien. He's President Trump's former national security advisor. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to talk to you because you had close proximity to President Trump in his decision-making process. And it needs to be said and reiterated that a president can only make the best of decisions if he has the best intelligence. And while these quiet warriors will never get enough credit, it really was a masterful job over months of time to have the very best intelligence to make such an important decision and have a flawless execution.
No, Jason, you're absolutely right. And Happy New Year to you and your family. And we saw this in the Baghdadi raid. It was the CIA that really laid the groundwork. We rightly give a lot of credit to our soldiers and sailors, airmen, and Marines who execute these operations flawlessly. But the way they do it is with the intelligence that the CIA gathers. And so, our friend, your former colleague, John Radcliffe, has been really quiet on this operation, but also on Operation Midnight Hammer, when we took out the Iranian nuclear sites. But the CIA has done just unbelievable work.
Yeah, they never get enough credit for being the quiet warriors that they are. Talk to us a little bit about China's interest and oil and how this all plays into it. Like Maduro needed to be brought to justice for his narco-terrorism. But oil does come in, the reserves that Venezuela has are unbelievable. And there's a reason why China has such a vested interest in Venezuela.
Yeah, so Jason, that's a great point. And the president played it masterfully yesterday. And you saw this, he really killed two strategic birds with one stone. Number one, by releasing the Venezuelan oil onto the world market, and they've got the largest reserves, as you point out, in the world. They've got more oil than Saudi. Now, it's dirty oil. It's not as light as the Saudi crude, but they've got more oil than Saudi. That's going to drive down the price of Russian oil. And it's going to take money out of Putin's pocket to prosecute the war in Ukraine. But he also did something great with China. He threw China a bone. He said, "Xi's my friend, and we'll sell, American oil companies will sell Venezuelan oil to China. So we get money for the Venezuelan people, which they need. We get money for American oil companies, which cuts our trade deficit with China. And the Chinese get the oil they need." So it was really a masterful performance of the president yesterday.
Also, explain to us the regional implications here. I'm kind of fixated on Cuba because they have been such an adversary and they just border on being just this failed state. I know that Secretary Rubio has paid keen attention to that, given his proximity and growing up in his life in Florida and being the senator from Florida. But Cuba doesn't really survive without Venezuela.
No, Cuba's been surviving on Venezuelan oil and gas for 25 years, almost since the fall of the Soviet Union. And Cuba's going to have a tough time surviving. Nicaragua, Ortega, the old Sandinistas that we fought against in the Reagan administration, they're going to have a tough time surviving. But more importantly, Jason, Venezuela invited Cuba, they invited Nicaragua, but they also invited China and Russia and Iran and Hezbollah into our hemisphere. They brought them into the Western Hemisphere. And the new Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, which said no colonial, when Monroe said we're not going to let European powers colonize the Americas, Trump has now said we're not going to let Russia and China in to colonialize the Americas either.
Yeah, the Monroe Doctrine has far-reaching implications. Last word about the decision-making process, because it's amazing to me that the world has not figured out that when Donald Trump foreshadows something, he actually really means it. He's going to act on it. And you better get in line or understand the implications.
So Jason, you point out something. Donald Trump is the greatest political risk-taking president we've ever had, maybe since George Washington. I mean,
yep.
and probably the greatest military president we've had since Eisenhower.
Yep.
And he's a peacemaker. He believes in peace with strength. He always gives these parties an opportunity to go the peaceful route. He offered Maduro plenty of off-ramps, plenty of chances to go into exile in Moscow or Beijing or Havana. Maduro didn't take him. Trump called his bluff, and Trump always calls the bluff, whether it's Baghdadi or Soleimani or Maduro. He always gives people a chance to do the right thing and to enter into a peace agreement, the Abraham Accords, Serbia, Kosovo.
I think we are so used to making promises and not delivering. That's like the political way of doing things. Both Democrats and Republicans make promises and just don't come through with it. Finally, a president, a capitalist, Donald Trump, making it happen. Promises made, promises kept.
Rwanda, Congo, all these peace agreements. But at the end of the day, if you don't enter into the peace agreement, watch out.
Yeah.
Peace with strength.
Ambassador Robert O'Brien, the former National Security Advisor, thank you so much for joining us on Sunday Morning Futures. More on the strikes against Venezuela with Florida Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna coming up next.
I'm so excited for coming back and being next to my family. Thanks, President Trump. This is our second liberty. This is our Independence Day from today on.
We're very thankful on what Trump has done, and we hope that he sees it through.
My family is still in Venezuela, and I've been looking forward to this day for so many years. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you, the United States, and God bless Venezuela. One day we will be free. One day we're going to have justice.
Just like every democracy, there are some people that agree with what Trump did, and then there are some people that don't. So it depends on what news channel you're watching. They're going to play the opposite of what the administration is trying to portray.
Now it's finally no longer a dream, it is reality. Thank God.
Venezuelans and Venezuelan Americans, many of them in Florida, thanking President Trump for removing Maduro from power. Let's bring in Florida Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna, member of the House Foreign Affairs and Oversight Committee. Congresswoman, you can hear the passion. You can see the emotion in their eyes. You represent a good big district in Florida. What was the reaction when you heard that this operation took place?
Look, there's been nothing but net positive. We even had local press reporting that some people that were refugees coming to the United States from Venezuela are now making arrangements to head back home. So, although you won't hear it on left-wing outlets, of which I was debating this last night on one of them, I can tell you it's been a very, very net positive. And you're actually seeing also, too, in places like Miami, there's actually been demonstrations in support of this. And so I think a lot of Venezuelan Americans are happy because they know that, back home is going to be safe now.
How bad was it in Venezuela? I mean, we hear about it, we see some pictures, but I don't really feel it. I can't say where I live in Utah that there are many Venezuelan constituents. There were some, but in Florida, they're pretty prevalent. So how bad was it in Venezuela?
Look, I don't know if you remember the reports from a few years back, but there were reports coming out that their own citizens in Venezuela were eating trash. And notice how you're not seeing any of the left-wing pundits that are trying to attack this administration for doing what they're doing report on that. But the conditions were awful, which is why you're seeing and why you did see a lot of Venezuelan refugees come to the United States trying to seek asylum. And so, look, President Trump, this administration has made it clear that this is not a war with Venezuela. In fact, you're seeing a massive amount of support and demonstration to include Venezuelans in Venezuela that are showing support for this. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you had a country that was run by an illegitimate president trafficking drugs into this country and threatening, political members in the House of Representatives or in the Senate, that's not acceptable. And so I think that they did what needed to be done. I think Joe Biden would have supported this. But the fact is that President Trump is the only president that actually had the willpower and the know-how to do this. And I'm very happy that he's in office right now.
Yeah, Biden gave it lip service, up the ante in terms of the reward money, but didn't take any action. Nobody believed him, and they were right.
Correct.
And so what do you say to your colleagues and maybe some of those paid protesters that are out there saying, oh, the president, he's overstepping his bounds. It's unconstitutional. Suddenly they found their beer muscles on this topic suddenly because it's Donald Trump.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? I remember last Congress, Representative Gates and I had actually put a war powers resolution on the floor to try to withdraw troops from Syria, and they all voted against it. And so the president is acting well within his authorities to do what he did. We support it. Obviously, we trust that the president is going to bring our boys and girls home safely, and he's proven to have done that in the past. But obviously, our colleagues are trying to make this political. And what I will tell you is several weeks back, I was on with the Department of Corrections on a ride-along, and we located a few pounds of fentanyl, or they had located a few pounds of fentanyl in Pinellas County. And so for my constituents, what President Trump is doing regarding the war on drugs is keeping residents of Pinellas County safe. But it doesn't just stop here. It's in the entire country. And so we're very happy to have him in office.
I think that's true. I think the warriors that reside in Florida and across this country who executed this mission, the quiet warriors, as we've talked about from the CIA and clandestine type of services, do absolutely a great service. And you know what? There are people that have lived in fear of Trans de Aragua and others no more. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna from the great state of Florida. Thank you. All right, that does it for Sunday Morning Futures. I'm Jason Chaffetz, filling in for Maria Bartiromo. Thanks to Maria for letting me sit in her seat. It's an honor to do so. Well, the news, it's going to continue this week on Mornings with Maria, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern on Fox Business Network. And I'll be on the big weekend show tonight.
Comment down below. What do you think? Do you agree with what Trump just did? Taking down the dictator over in Venezuela and locking him up in New York? I mean, those are some ballsy moves to send in the military to go get a guy who stole an election from another country. It's like Donald Trump is the president to the entire world. And if there's a country out there breaking the law, America will send their military to take care of that problem. Insane. And we just heard Trump talking about Colombia manufacturing drugs, and he doesn't like that because those drugs are killing Americans. Insane. Yeah, what's up? Recording. But I want to go to BJ's real quick to buy some stuff. I have no clue how to look it up. But give me a minute, I'm almost done. And then we're going to go to BJ's to get dressed. All right. Where was I? So, Sunday Morning Future with Maria Bartiromo. And we live in some crazy weekend. What just happened? I can't wait to see the movie. After the Trump derangement syndrome goes away, and people start going back to saying how great Trump was in that military coup of sending in top-notch, quiet officials. Nobody knew what was happening, and take down the Venezuela dictator. There's got to be a great movie, similar to the Bin Laden movie. So it's going to be great. They just got to let the movie roll. TDS is just stopping a lot of people. Trump derangement syndrome. It's making people not push forward with our idea Trump has. But it's insane. I'm over here. My name is Noel. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up. Give it a like. Let's try to spread the word that what Trump is doing is historic. So we got to capture each and every single day and put it out there that the next politician, whoever goes after Trump, you got to step it up and stop making empty promises and follow through with whatever you tell the people you're going to do when you get in office. I think all of this that Trump is doing, he promised, he says he's going to do it. You got the professionals and the mainstream media saying, oh, you can't do that. You're not going to be able to do that. But then he shuts them up and gets it done. I mean, the man is a genius. He's like, yeah, I am the president. I know how things work, and we're going to make it work. I'm kind of glad that he lost the 2020 election because for those 4 years, he was able to prepare a little better and make sure that these 4 years, things get done. And we don't have a bunch of people behind the scenes destroying his plans. So it actually worked out. God knows what he's doing. He made it happen so that he prepares himself to take down all these politicians that all they care about is their pockets. And you know, with conspiracy theories, they keep saying that Trump just wants to make more money for himself. When ultimately the guy's a billionaire, he already has all the money in the world. So he maybe he enrich himself, but he's doing a lot for the country. He's doing a lot to bring peace to the entire world. I think this year, hopefully, he'll bring Russia and Ukraine to peace. And forget the Nobel Peace Prize, but I'm not going to win none of that, but he doesn't care. He gets it done. But that's my opinion. Let me know what you think. Again, over here, verbal freedom, verbal on life, and making sure to express myself, you know. We all here in life in a limited time, and we got to make use of our time, you know. I'm over here battling my disability. Glad to be speaking with you guys. Glad to be verbal. On the background, I can hear my dogs just barking, going crazy. Insane. They don't know how to shut up when I'm trying to talk. My son just came down asking for the password to my email. I got to give it up to him. But yes, those of you who commented below, shout out to, I see comments from Carol. Hopefully you're still on and can hear this. And yes, I do appreciate everybody watching. This now has turned into my end of life job, you know, just going on and expressing myself. This is my last job on earth in America. So let's make it work. Let's make it happen. You know, as long as you put in the work, you should get great results. I'm going to try to put in at least an hour every day. So far, this video, almost an hour, up to 52 minutes. And I appreciate everybody watching. Again, Carol, yes, I appreciate that you're here. Watching this video, you're still on from the beginning. Amazing. You know, with mainstream media, they just keep putting on fake news and stories that don't make no sense to the regular common sense people like you and I. So we got to go ahead and talk. And we got to talk about the fact that we know that you're lying to us. We see the fake news. We see the narrative, the political point of view that makes no sense. And unless somebody says it, they don't believe it. So thankfully, people are talking about it and are mentioning it. Okay, so with that said, what's left for me to do today? I'm going to try to go to Beaches real quick and do some shopping. Well, some coffee. I need to buy some coffee. It's part of the norm. I'm going to try to make another video today. I want to see what Meet the Press and Face the Nation are talking about this. Because they're the two Democratic point of views that talk about how bad Trump is. And that's all they do. So I'm pretty sure they probably got a negative point of view. I'm going to go ahead and roll the clip on Face the Nation and Meet the Press. The two number one enemies for Donald Trump. And he knows how to treat those. He knows how to treat those two channels because he knows that they still got Trump derangement syndrome. and try to make him look bad. And we got to sort of listen to them just to see what they're saying. All right? And point out the inconsistency, how it's wrong for them to make such negative point of views. You know, I still got friends that have TDS, and all they do and talk about is how Trump needs to be stopped, even though Trump is doing God's work right now. Let's be honest. Here's a little clip of Face the Nation. Marco Rubio goes on there and talks, no fear. Shout out to Marco Rubio. Who's not afraid to talk to the media and let them know about the situation that the country is going through and what we're doing to make the country better. And by the way, this is 2026, so it's going to be a great year for Trump this year. Nothing but good news.
We begin today with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who joins us this morning from Miami. Good morning to you, Mr. Secretary.
Check it out. Hold on, my internet is acting up. Let me pause it real quick. Let it load up. And let's see how Rubio spars with Face the Nation.
Good morning. Good morning.
President Trump said that the United States will run the country and that Venezuela will be largely run by, he pointed to you and some of the other cabinet members when he spoke to the public yesterday. He said the U.S. retains all military options, including boots on the ground, until U.S. demands have been fully met.
Yeah.
How do you plan to run the country?
Well, first of all, I think the important thing to point out is that the key to what that regime relies on and is the economy fueled by oil. And right now, it is an oil industry that is backwards and really needs a lot of help and work in terms of it. And not only that, but it doesn't help the people. None of the money from the oil gets to the people. It's all stolen by the people that are on the top there. And so that's why we have a quarantine. There's a quarantine right now in which sanctioned oil shipments, there's a boat, and that boat is under U.S. sanctions. We go get a court order, we will seize it. That remains in place. And that's a tremendous amount of leverage that will continue to be in place until we see changes, not just further the national interest of the United States, which is number one, but also that lead to a better future for the people of Venezuela. And so that's the sort of control the president is pointing to when he says that. We continue with that quarantine. And we expect to see that there will be changes, not just in the way the oil industry is run for the benefit of the people, but also so that they stop the drug trafficking, so that we no longer have these gang problems, so that they kick the FARC and the ELN out, and that they no longer cozy up to Hezbollah and Iran in our own hemisphere.
Yeah.
But what you are talking about is more of a sanctions pressure, not boots on the ground. So just to be clear, there is no plan for U.S. occupation of this country of nearly 30 million people.
Well, I think, first of all, the president always retains optionality on anything and on all of these matters. He certainly has the ability and the right under the Constitution of the United States to act against imminent and urgent threats against the country. That said, and all of that said, right now, I think what you see is a force posture was one of the largest naval deployments in modern history, certainly in the Western Hemisphere. And it is capable of stopping not just drug boats, but stopping any of these sanctioned boats that come in and out and really paralyzing that portion of how the regime, generates revenue. So that will continue to be in place. What the president has said, obviously, is, and I think what he's pointing to is that this obsession people have about boots and this or that, but he does not feel like he is going to publicly, rule out options that are available for the United States, even though that's not what you're seeing right now. What you're seeing right now is an oil quarantine that allows us to exert tremendous leverage over what happens next.
Well, he also said the U.S. is ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. But I'm curious because you just described the regime as still in place, essentially. I mean, I'm curious why the Trump administration decided to leave it intact and only arrest Nicolas Maduro and his wife, the person who controls the police, the chief thug, Diaz-Cabello. He's the interior minister. He's been indicted by the United States. He was in that indictment the administration released. He's a narco terrorist. There's a $25 million price on his head. He's still in place. The defense minister, who has deep ties to Russia, $15 million price on his head. He is still in place. I'm confused. Are they still wanted by the United States? Why didn't you arrest them if you are taking out the narco terrorist regime?
You're confused? I don't know why that's confusing to you.
They're still in
I mean,
power.
It's very simple. You're not going to go in and wrap up. But you can't go. You're going to go in and suck up 5 people. They're already complaining about this one operation. Imagine the howls we would have from everybody else if we actually had to go and stay there 4 days to capture 4 other people. We got the top priority. The number one person on the list was the guy who claimed to be the president of the country that he was not, and he was arrested along with his wife, who was also indicted. And that was a pretty sophisticated and frankly complicated operation.
It was.
It is not easy to land helicopters in the middle of the largest military base in the country. The guy lived on a military base. Land within 3 minutes, kick down his door, grab him, put him in handcuffs, read him his rights, put him in a helicopter, and leave the country without losing any American or any American assets. That's not an easy mission. And you're asking me, why didn't we do that in 5 other places at the same time? I mean, that's absurd. I do think this is one of the most, daring, complicated, sophisticated missions this country has carried out in a very long time. Tremendous credit to the U.S. military personnel who did it. It was unbelievable. And tremendous success. And today, an indicted drug trafficker who was not the legitimate president of Venezuela, who we don't recognize, the Biden administration didn't recognize, 60-something countries don't recognize, the European Union doesn't recognize, and many countries in Latin America don't recognize. He was a indicted drug trafficker. He was arrested. His wife was arrested, also
but the
indicted,
the others who are also indicted are still
system of courts.
The others who are also indicted are still in place. So that's the point of my questioning there. But you talked about not being the legitimate
So you wanted
president.
us to land in 5 other military bases?
No, I'm asking why you chose that this was the limit of the military operation. But to your point that you just made, that that Maduro was not the legitimate president.
He was the guy who was claiming to be the president.
Right. Well, the opposition.
He was the top target.
Okay. The opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado and Mundo Gonzalez.
And one at a time. How about that? How about we start with the top and move down?
Won that 2024 election by your own account. They were some of the first people you called when you were Secretary of State. You said Edmundo Gonzalez is the rightful president of Venezuela. Is that still the U.S. policy? And if so, are you working on a transition to have those elected leaders run the country?
Well, I think a couple things. I have tremendous admiration for Maria Corina Machado. I have admiration for Edmundo. We have all those views about what the election that happened the last time, and not only us, but many other countries around the world. There's that. And there's the mission we are on right now. We have been very clear from the beginning, because I still think that a lot of people analyze everything that happens in foreign policy through the lens of what happened from 2001 to 2015 or 16. The whole, foreign policy apparatus thinks everything is Libya, everything is Iraq, everything is Afghanistan. This is not the Middle East. And our mission here is very different. This is the Western Hemisphere. Within the Western Hemisphere, we have a country, potentially a very rich country, that has cozied itself up under the control of this regime, has cozied up to Iran, has cozied up to Hezbollah, has allowed narco trafficking gangs to operate with impunity from their own territory, allows boats with drugs to traffic from their territory. And we are addressing that. And by the way, 9 million people in the largest mass migration event in modern history have left that country since 2014.
But that regime is still
also
in
having
place.
An impact on us. That is what we are addressing now.
When you spoke yesterday,
but we're not just addressing the regime. We are addressing the factors that are a threat to the national interest of the United States.
Understood. You spoke with Delcy Rodriguez, who is now, according to President Trump, sworn in as the president, as the leader of Venezuela. Did she promise you that she is expelling all those American adversaries from Venezuelan territory? What exactly did she agree to do when she spoke to you?
Look at her trying to get all the American secrets, how we're going to take down everybody from that country. She wants us to put it out there so then like that, they could go and hide and go up against what we're doing. Bunch of snitch.
we are going to, our objectives when it comes to how Venezuela impacts the national interest of the United States have not changed, and we want those addressed. We want drug trafficking to stop. We want no more gang members to come our way. We don't want to see the Iranian and, by the way, Cuban presence in the past. We want the oil industry in that country not to go to the benefit of pirates and adversaries of the United States, but for the benefit of the people. We want to see all of that happen. We insist on seeing that happen.
Did she
and
promise
we are
that?
going to work to continue to see that happen. Well, right now, we are going to see what happens moving forward. Let me just say that. I'm not obviously going to have these conversations in the media. These are delicate and complicated things that require mature statesmanship, and that's what we intend to do. But our goals remain the same. The difference is that the person who was in charge, even though not legitimately, in the past was someone you could not work with. We just could not work with him. He is not a person that had ever kept any of the deals he made, broke every deal he ever made a fool out of the Biden administration on the deal they made with him. And we offered him on multiple occasions an opportunity to remove himself from the scene in a positive way. He chose not to do so.
But his number two is now running the country. His number two is someone you can work with. And is that what you're implying here? And did she tell you that she will transition to democracy? And the woman who won the election along with her partner there, Maria Corina Machado.
We are going to make our assessments of people. You're asking me to make an assessment. We're going to make an assessment on the basis of what they do, not what they say publicly in the interim, not what what they've done in the past in many cases, but what they do moving forward. So we're going to find out. You're asking me, do I know what decisions people are going to make? I don't. I do know this, that if they don't make the right decisions, the United States will retain multiple levers of leverage to ensure that our interests are protected. And that includes the oil quarantine that's in place, among other things.
Well,
and but we are going to judge moving forward. We're going to judge everything by what they do. And we're going to see what they do.
Okay, because yesterday President Trump said Maria Corina Machado doesn't have the support or respect within the country. And by your own admission, she walloped Nicolas Maduro in the last election. So it does sound like a decision was made. But
she wasn't on the ballot in the last election.
No, but her party was.
Edmundo was.
Yes.
Correct.
So
it was an illegitimate election, and that's why he's not a legitimate president.
Right, but is there an agreement to transition to democracy?
I think what the president
not.
pointed out is the obvious. Well, I think what the point, but there has to be a little realism here, okay? A transition to they've had this regime, they've had this system of Chavismo in place for 15 or 16 years. And everyone's asking why 24 hours after Nicolas Maduro was arrested, there isn't an election scheduled for tomorrow? That's absurd.
I'm asking what you talked about with her.
These things take time. There's a process.
Right. And you
I'm not going to publicly get into details about any of those things other than to tell you that our expectations remain the same. And we are going to judge whoever we're interacting with moving forward by whether or not those conditions are met. Of course, we want to see Venezuela transition to be a place completely different than what it looks like today. But obviously, we don't have the expectation that's going to happen in the next 15 hours. What we do have an expectation is that it move in that direction. We think it's in our national interest and, frankly, in the interest of people of Venezuela.
The president used the word oil 20 times in his press conference. You talked about these tremendous oil assets that Venezuela has. But the president's last envoy to Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, is publicly arguing that you know better than the policy you're backing. He said, quote, Venezuelan plutocrats or U.S. oil executives seem to be coming to Mar-a-Lago and whispering about how easy life would be if we just made a deal with the regime once Maduro was gone. Is that what happened here?
No, that's not what happened here. What happened here is that we arrested a narco trafficker who's now going to stand trial in the United States for the crimes he's committed against our people for 15 years. And the person who helped him, of course, his wife, who was co-located with him, so she was arrested as well. That's what happened here. As far as oil, look, oil is critical, not just to fueling economies all over the world. It's critical to Venezuela's future. Their oil industry is completely destroyed. It's destroyed all those oil fields that used to produce a lot and wealth for their country and their people. Those things are decrepit. They're bankrupt. They need to be reinvested in. It's obvious. They do not have the capability to bring up that industry again. They need investment from private companies who are only going to invest under certain guarantees and conditions. That has to go to the benefit of the Venezuelan people. Right now, all of that wealth is stolen. It's stolen and it goes into the hands of oligarchs around the world and the oligarchs inside of Venezuela. A handful of people benefit from it. The people don't benefit from it. On top of that, it's very simple, okay? in the 21st century under the Trump administration, we are not going to have a country like Venezuela in our own hemisphere, in the sphere of control and the crossroads for Hezbollah, for Iran, and for every other malign influence in the world. That's just not going to exist.
Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, would love to keep talking to you, but I'm told you are out of time. I have to leave it there.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Marco Rubio sparring with Face the Nation as to what just happened in Venezuela and what's going to happen next. Here you got the Democratic Party want the Republicans to say everything or to put out all the state secrets, and it's insane. Comment down below. What do you think about what just happened in Venezuela? Was it a good thing that they got rid of the head? And are they doing good with what's next? Because it's insane. Again, shout out to Carol. Get rid of her already? Yeah, we got to get rid of that Face the Nation lady. She's like part of the Democratic arm. And all they want to do is put down the administration. She definitely got TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, right? She's why I don't want Meet the Press. We're going to leave it there. We're not going to watch Meet the Press. And yeah, type of person that makes you want to just go crazy. With that said, my name is Noel. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Give us a thumbs up. And I'm going to stand back and come back a little later. Hopefully you enjoyed the cast. With that said, see you in the next one. Peace.